A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to Monday's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Taiwan Jabela, your host. Let's look at some of the headlines in tomorrow's Namibian Sun. COVID-19 impacted conservancies, or it has rather impacted conservancies very hard, like all other industries, and conservancies are not spared. Details of that story in tomorrow's edition of Namibian Sun. Also, the Namibian Defense Force is forging ahead with mandatory vaccinations. There's been a fight back from some of the members of the force, having even gone to organizations like the Affirmative Repositioning Movement and lawyers to have the decision rescinded. But the generals seem to be pushing ahead with the decision. Finally, Okahanja municipality, sorry for the spelling there, of Okahanja. Okahanja accused of neglecting Vergemoeg, that is one of the locations in Okahanja where residents feel left out in terms of services as provided for by, or as promised to them by the local authority there in Okahanja. Now we welcome the Managing Director of Namcor, that is the National Petroleum Company, that is Emmanuel Mulunga, to speak to us about the very good news that was announced towards the end of last week about the discovery of oil. A lot of questions being asked, and we brought Mr. Mulunga to the show to help us unpack some of those things. Emmanuel, thank you for making time.
You're welcome. You're welcome, David.
Sure,
it's nice to be on your program.
Wonderful. There was you guys issued a statement announcing this breakthrough discovery, and for a layman like myself, the language was just too technical.
Yes.
Sum it up for us what it actually entails.
Okay. Basically, what we're saying is Namcor and Shell and QatarEnergy, the joint venture partners, we're exploring for oil in the Orange Basin in this particular block.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate enough, I think, on our first attempt to discover oil in two separate zones. Okay. And this is very, very significant indeed, I think, for Namcor and for Namibia in general. Indeed.
Is it... Do we have an idea of the value yet? Is it something that can be pursued commercially, or is it another thing like a couple of years ago where somebody was there was a bottle filled with something like oil and then it ended there? Or what are the prospects?
Yeah. No, I mean, this is a discovery. I think it's unlike a few years ago when HRT made a non-commercial discovery. Yeah. But I think this time we want to take it one step at a time. So we do call it a discovery, meaning there is something substantial there. But we want to take our time to analyze the results of this well and the samples that we've taken in the well. And then after that, we're going to drill a second well very shortly this month, just to actually try and determine the extent of the discovery that we've made. Yeah. So we don't want to create unnecessary expectations. We want to take it one step at a time. But I can confirm you, I mean, this is Shell who are the operators, and I don't think Shell will allow us to make an announcement of a discovery if it's not really indeed a discovery.
Indeed. Which brings me to my next question about your partners in this joint venture, Shell, QatarEnergy. These are reputable international organizations. Having them as your partners, what kind of quality and leadership and everything, even the technical expertise, do they bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, Shell is a renowned operator, a renowned producer the world over. So we were very fortunate enough, I think 7 years ago when they came into the license, to have them as a partner. QatarEnergy came in recently after one of the partners, Cosmos Energy, left. Yeah, this is serious business. It's a strong partnership, and we're looking forward, obviously, to take the next steps forward in terms of more exploration wells, and then later on some appraisal wells, which obviously will lead to development and ultimately production of oil in this block.
Yeah. One of the issues, Mr. Mulunga, one of the concerns that have always been raised around projects like that is the stake that the locals would usually have in something like that, and oil is such a huge commodity globally. Are you at liberty to give us some sort of breakdown as to who owns how much percentage, or at this level, what kind of partnership do you have, as a matter of fact?
Okay. I think, Tovana, that's an important question, and I think it's a question that the viewers or readers on social media always like to ask. When they see that Namcor is a 10% stake, they think that is all the value that Namibia has in the project, and obviously that is not correct. The 10% is really just for Namcor as a local partner, a state-owned company. But when you produce oil and gas, you have to consider there's more than Namcor's 10% equity that Namibia will be sort of getting. There are royalties that are paid on production of oil, which is 5%. There's what is called petroleum income tax, yielded at 35%. So when you divide up the cake in total, ultimately, government will walk away with anything between 60 to 65%, while not having taken the risk. And the operators obviously will probably walk away with something like 45% or so. So it's not as if we're doing this for the first time. Exploration of oil and gas happens all over the world, and it depends on really how enabling your fiscal environment is to be able to attract these companies. So the companies take a lot of risk. They put in a lot of money. I mean, like this past well cost something like in the region of $70 million US, and there was a 75% chance of them not discovering anything. But we were fortunate enough to discover something. So the equity levels, I think, between government and the private companies are quite even distributed, and I think everybody will be able to make money, and that's how you want a project like this to basically to be.
Indeed. Emmanuel, you've been in the space of, in this petroleum space for a long time. Yes. You were a petroleum commissioner before you became MD of Namcor.
Yes.
Oil, having that as a country, having it as one of your resources, especially for a country like ours, what is the significance of having that?
It's yeah, I mean, the significance of an oil discovery can really not be overestimated or underestimated. An oil discovery such as this can make a huge impact on a country the size of Namibia in terms of population, especially if it's a sizable discovery. So it can change the fortunes of the country around. But obviously it's something that needs to be managed properly. Obviously we have to start managing the expectations. But once production happens and we start getting those taxes and royalties, I think it can really turn the fortunes of the country around. So something that we need to embrace. Obviously there are concerns from the public out there that in some other countries, I mean, oil can turn out to be a curse.
In fact, that was going to be my next question, and ask how you're going to manage that aspect.
So it's something that I think all of us will determine moving forward, especially the future generations, because we have to understand that production will probably only start in 6 or 7 years from now. So it's something that will happen overnight, but of course, between now and say in the next 2 years, there'll be a lot of activities happening to prepare for production, so development. Yeah, I mean, it's a major milestone, I think, for a country. I mean, some of us have been, as you said, been around for more than 25 years, basically trying to lure investors to come in and to do exploration and to discover oil. So it's great that we finally made it.
Yeah. So does Namcor have other licenses with similar prospects? And if yes, will you then go with your current partners into those specific blocks, or would you be open to other players? I think it would be a very weird arrangement working with these two here and then the other 3 or 4 in another block. What are the plans around that?
Yeah, we're actually fortunate enough as a national oil company to be involved in basically all of the licenses in the country. We had one of the ministers, I think it was Honorable Ngintina, when he was Minister of Mines and Energy, who basically made a decision that from now on, whatever license is going to be issued, any exploration license that will be issued going forward, Namcor has to have an interest of 10%. So that has been practiced. So basically, practically all the licenses we have either 10% or 15%. In some of them, we obviously have larger equities, but this thing costs a lot of money. So those 10% are what is called carried interest. So we don't really pay for it upfront. We'll pay for it later once a discovery is made. Just significant development is that there's another license close to this one where the discovery has been made in the Orange Basin, where drilling activities are currently happening. And that is, the operator there is TotalEnergies.
Okay.
And again, we have a 10% equity in there, and QatarEnergy also have an interest in that license, and Impact Oil. So that partnership is currently drilling. So that partnership is also getting towards the end of the drilling campaign there. So this month we will also know whether there's a discovery made in that particular license. So we're looking forward to that, and imagine in a scenario where you have 2 discoveries in Namibia. I mean, that is just going to, country exploration activities is just going to take off like a rocket. And I mean, the developments that will happen, I mean, whether it's from places like Wolfish Bay and Ludretz, are just going to boom, because there's a lot of influx of people that are going to come in to develop these discoveries. So we're looking forward to that. Yeah.
Before you go for a break, give me a sense of how this latest discovery compares with your involvement in the Recon Africa project in Kavango East. How do they compare, not only in terms of value and prospects, but also do they differ in any way, the 2 of them?
Yeah. So the Recon Africa license is onshore, on land, while these ones that we were talking about are offshore. Offshore, obviously, that will take a lot of money to develop and produce, while onshore is not the same kind of investment that will go into it. So again, we are fortunate to have a 10% equity stake there. So if the discovery is made there, we will also then be fortunate enough to get 10% of the equity of the production. So again, their exploration activities are going to happen. There's going to be drilling happening this year. So I think before the end of this year, we'll definitely know whether there's oil or not in the Kavango Basin, and what sort of type of quantities.
The Kudu gas, that project doesn't get mentioned as frequently as it used to be. What is the status there?
No, I mean, it's quite sad, I have to say, what has happened to the Kudu gas project. I mean, we were on the verge of actually having a Kudu gas to power project, I think in 2014. But I think government had agreed to give us the necessary guarantees. But then I think when the new Minister of Finance came in, I think that was shelved. And unfortunately, I mean, we would have probably been in a position to have electricity generated from our own sources currently. But in the meantime, we had to sell most of our equity because we don't have the money to obviously do the development and the production ourselves. So we ended up having a 5% interest. There's a company called BW Kudu that is now taking the development forward. But this is the problem with gas in those kind of quantities. If you don't have a market for it, it becomes problematic. It becomes what is called stranded gas. So, but now with these new discoveries that we're making in the Orange Basin, which is basically in the same neighborhood, it might create an opportunity to add some of these discoveries together and make Kudu viable. So, BW Offshore is still doing a lot of work. We still have a 5% interest there to see whether we can look at South Africa maybe to sell some of that gas to South Africa for electricity generation there.
Okay. Indeed, we go for a quick break and then return shortly for the second half of the show. We continue our conversation with Emmanuel Mulunga. He's Managing Director of Namcor, our national petroleum company. One of the articles that I saw last week, must have been last week, was talking about how the revenues of Namcor have improved significantly. I think I saw a figure of 2.2 billion in a space that I can't remember now of time. Compared to a couple of 100,000 prior to that. Is this the Immanuel Mulunga magic? What did you do there?
Yeah, I think the figures were, I was just basically quoting, I think from 2016 or so, a year after I started at Namco. We managed to grow the revenues from just under 600 million to what we're going to project by end of March, about 2.5 billion Namibian dollars. So I think we're quite happy with the progress that we've made at Namcor. And most of that actually comes from our downstream business. Because the upstream business, exploration, production is only really starting now with these discoveries. But as you know, we have a downstream business and we have an upstream business.
Yes.
So we've been aggressively competing in the market. Taking on our competitors, we landed some big, big customers like Husap Mine and so on, and just other, businesses on the commercial side. And then we started, as you know, entering the retail space, building service stations, and so on. So we're proud to have grown, I think, the company that much. And obviously, we still have aggressive growth ambition, and I think we believe. My personal target is to take the company at least to $5 billion revenue in the next year or two before obviously my terms comes to an end.
Indeed. Now, with all these discoveries and obviously your partner's expectations in terms of what you must inject into the eventual production of this, I'm sure that you spoke about something called carried
interest.
Carried interest,
yes.
Which has been very friendly to you. But eventually, once you start making more breakthroughs, obviously you'd be required to put some money on the table. Do you have thoughts, for example, of listing on the stock exchange to raise some money as time goes, or how do you intend to raise that? Because it will be a lot of money.
Yeah. No, I think that's a decision that will be made, I think, at that stage. But for now, I don't think there's appetite, I think, from the shareholder to list Namcor. It's a national oil company. And as a national oil company, you're supposed to find innovative ways of making money, producing or selling petroleum products. Because when I got there in 2015, I think we were a very small company, surviving from a government levy. And for me, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, that was not good enough. So I think we really went ahead and we grew the size of the company. But it's, at some point in the future, government might decide to list the company. But I think maybe just to share with you some of the innovative ways that we've come up with to raise more money, like with the Recon Africa licenses. We have a 10% carried interest there, and I think we've received some criticism. I think from some parliamentarians, and I think some of that criticism is not unwarranted. Where Namcor only has a 10% stake, but while the value of the share price of, say, Recon Africa keeps on, appreciating, and the company becomes bigger and bigger. So I think what we've decided recently is to, convert some of that 10%, 5% of that, into shares. So we're currently doing a deal with Recon Africa, where we're going to share, almost sell our 5% to them, and they'll give us 5 million shares in Recon Africa. Meaning we're just going to make some of those shares liquid to make sure that we have access to funds if we are required to carry out some other investments and so on, and maybe to use some of that money to grow our downstream business, for example. So I think those are some of the ways that we've decided to generate some extra revenues for the company.
Regarding Recon Africa, and I'm sure similar questions will pop up soon regarding your new discovery with Shell and QatarEnergy. It's always this question of environment. And there's been consistent denial by the partners to say, look, we are following a particular template. We're not violating any environmental regulations or anything. Can you just state again, IMS, on record to say how confident are you in Recon Africa, in the Kavango project in particular, as far as environmental protection is concerned?
So I think we have to understand, obviously, when it comes to onshore exploration, there's always a resistance there. There are different lobbyists who believe that if you do onshore exploration, you're going to damage the environment. But that doesn't have to be so. I think Recon Africa, is a responsible organization. Namcor is a responsible organization. And we want to make sure that whatever we do, we follow the regulations that are in place. I think the environment is important. That area is pristine like any other area. But of course, it's not in the Kavango sort of delta as people make it out to be. It's a little bit far, but it's easy to manage, I think, the environmental sort of consequences, potential consequences. So it's really not such a big problem. But of course, we must also understand that there are, unscrupulous people out there that want to sell the share price, they're trading on the share price of Recon Africa, and they send out all this negative news to try and get the share price to go down so that they can profit from it. So there's also that element. So we know that it's happening. There are people who basically specialize in doing this. So Recon Africa, Namcor, I think at this stage we are following all the necessary regulations, and if there are areas where we need to improve, we improve. But I don't think we should leave the oil that is in the ground in the Kavango region. So it would be nice to have the people in the Kavango region also benefit from some of these resources. And the country is large, so we need to support this, and that's why we as Namco are playing our role as a partner to Recon Africa to make sure that the whatever exploration and the consequent development and production that's going to happen from there is carried out in an environmental sound manner.
Indeed. The final question then to you, Mr. Mulunga, is, when you first came to Namcor, we used to see a lot of headlines about, you know, the board, the management not really gelling properly. And for some time now, we haven't had any of that. How important is it for you as an MD or and your peers in the SOE space to have either a supportive board or a board that doesn't really, that knows its boundaries and allowing you, the technocrats, to do your work? Just as a principle, how important is that?
It's very, very important, very, very important. And corporate governance, we take it lightly. So if you have a board that is fighting management or is fighting the MD, I mean, such an entity is really not going to go forward. And I have to say, obviously, over the years, situation has improved. I think we have a very supportive board now, and that's why things are really moving. I mean, the previous boards obviously have played their role, and we don't have any ill feelings towards anybody. We understand that, especially when it comes to oil and gas, it has always perceptions of a lot of things going on. There's perceptions of a lot of money, perceptions of potential to make a lot of money. So it's normal to have those kind of problems. I mean, especially in Africa. I mean, a friend of mine was telling me, you know, that congratulating me for actually having survived 6 years at Namco. Because in other African countries, for you to survive 6 years in a national oil company is almost unheard of. So it's the nature of the beast. I accept it, and and I'm happy that I've managed to survive and to make the contributions that I've made so far to Namco.
Indeed. Mr. Mulunga, thank you very much for making time for us.
No, you're welcome.
Sure.
Welcome. Nice to be here.
Indeed. That was Emmanuel Mulunga. He's Managing Director of Namco. Of course, telling us about that very significant announcement last week that they and their other two partners have made some oil discovery in the Orange Basin. And yeah, that is the news. Thank you for watching, and good night.
Hi there, I'm Elliot Nick Scraver. I love sharing my knowledge with others and mentoring newcomers. Every day, I work closely with the rest of my team to solve anything from basic to advanced routing and switching problems. But what do I really do? Well, my job mainly includes designing customer VPN connections, internet connectivity solutions with our fiber, LTE, and Redwood products. But being a jack of all trades, I also help configure routers, switches, provide telephonic and remote support to our local and international SLA customers. Our team is all about solving problems. Like if you have a remote office and you need a solution to securely transfer files over the internet, you got it with our powerful software-defined wide area network solution. We are invested in understanding our customer needs and finding the perfect network design to meet your requirements. And that's something we do best at Paratus. We keep problem solving simple. We do it right the first time around, and we're never scared of a good challenge. Need a solution to your network problems? You got it.